Good afternoon, everyone. How's it going? I got a little Seahawks stuff that I want to talk about in this video, but before I get into the content, I will be streaming on the Hawks Nest channel later tonight actually. Should be about 7 o'clock. We're going to go for a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the draft. We're going to talk a bunch about the new look Seahawks defense. Going to talk about some considerations that may need to be made in free agency because we're trying to switch up the defense. You guys know that we usually have some interesting things to say, so swing on by the Hawks Nest. If you're not already subbed up to them, you probably should be. We'll be streaming there around 7, and we usually go for close to 2 hours, actually, now that the off-season started, and there are so many different ways to go. But, yeah, hope to see you there, the Hawks Nest. Okay, so I want to talk about the general off-season plan for the Seahawks. And I want to clarify some things because I think some people kind of have the wrong idea about the things that I'm advocating for this team to do. Because it seems to me that there are some people out there who think that my hope for this team is that they put all their chips in the middle for 1 year, which would be 2022, and then they do everything they can to win a Super Bowl in 2022, and then after that, the party's over. Like, the next 2 years, everybody go home, don't even bother watching the games, just find something else to do on Sunday because the team isn't going to be interesting at all. I think some people think that's what I'm advocating for, and I'm not. And I think a lot of people think that kind of in relation to the Rams, because the Rams, that's a team that very obviously went all in to win a Super Bowl. It worked, but I think that one thing that I'm seeing from some people is they expect that Rams team to be terrible for a long time now. Like, oh, they got their Super Bowl. They made all these trades. They traded away their draft picks. They got all these veterans. Now they won their Super Bowl, but now it's not going to be worth it because they're going to be terrible for 5 years. But I don't see how that's a reasonable expectation. They still have a good quarterback. They still have Aaron Donald. They still are going to have Leonard Floyd. I know they're going to lose Von Miller. They're probably going to lose Odell, if Odell was really a huge part of what they were doing anyway. I mean, they had successful seasons without Odell many times before he got there. They may lose Robert Woods as a salary cap cut. They may lose one or two other guys, but that team should still be good for a few more years, and I think this Seahawks team can be that as well. And what I'm trying to get at here is I am not trying to construct a Seattle Seahawks super team for 2022 and throwing away the next 2 or 3 seasons. What I'm really trying to do here with the things that I'm advocating for us to do this offseason is open like a 4-year window where you're doing everything you can from 2022 to 2025. That's your 4-year window where you're really trying to win a Super Bowl. And then after that, maybe you have to take a year to get punched in the groin a few times. And then you're rebooting. Kind of like what the Saints are probably going to be doing for this season. But I'm not trying to open a 1-year window. I'm trying to open a 4-year window. And I want to talk about how that works, because I think that some people think that my moves, the moves that I'm advocating for, would just be a 1-year thing, and then the party would be over, and maybe we get to the NFC title game or even get to the Super Bowl, but if we don't win it in 2022, then it's all a complete waste. But it doesn't have to be that way. Let me explain here. So if you take a look at a lot of the players that I've advocated for the Seahawks to go after in free agency this offseason, or even some of the players the Seahawks could retain, okay? I'm talking about guys like Marlon Mack, Gerald Everett, Teron Armstead, Mitch Morse, Jadeveon Clowney, Grady Jarrett. These are not Hassan Reddick. None of these guys are old. There are a couple guys that I've advocated for us getting who would be kind of in that 1 year and one and done category, guys like Jason Kelsey and McCourty, sure. But most of the guys that I'm advocating for are guys who are going to continue to be good players in the NFL for some time. Marlon Mack is like, what, 26? And has very few miles on him. Gerald Everett's 28, and I think his best football is still in front of him. Teron Armstead's like 31. The injury history is a concern, but you wouldn't expect an offensive lineman to just suddenly not be good at the age of 31, right? Like, Teron Armstead, based off his age, should probably have at least 3 more elite years in him, maybe more. We see offensive linemen play into their late 30s frequently now. If you got a center like a Mitch Morse from Buffalo, he's probably got at least 3 or 4 good years left in him. And Jadeveon Clowney is, I think, 29 now. I think he just turned 29. So a lot of these players that I'm advocating for the Seahawks spending big money to get, they have several good years in front of them still. And I want to talk about the salary cap as well, because I think the thing that people might counter what I just said with would be to say that, well, you're not going to be able to pay all those guys going forward. Like, you're going to bring them all on, you're going to backload their contracts, so you're going to get them all together for that first year, but then the next year, there's going to be too much money, you're going to have to cut some guys, you're going to have to eat dead cap, and then the party's over. So, let's talk about this. So, what we're looking at right here is the 2022 Seahawks salary chart. So, it accounts, I mean, we've spent a lot of time looking at this because this is for the upcoming season. A lot of players on it, a lot of names on it, a lot of cap hits on it. And I think we all understand that the players that you bring in this offseason as free agents, guys like the hypothetical Teron Armstead, Hassan Reddick, Grady Jarrett, Jadeveon Clowney, you're going to bring them in on big contracts, but the cap hit that first year is not going to be that big. Same goes for extending DK Metcalf. The first year cap hit for Metcalf's contract will probably be less than $9 million, even if the length of the contract is $20 million a year, or the average of the contract, is $20 million a year. That first year is probably going to be $8 or $9 million. It could be less, honestly. If you bring back DJ Reed, same thing. If you bring back Quandre Diggs, same thing. These are going to be backloaded contracts, so even though we theoretically only have about $35.4 million in cap space, we're going to create more, of course. There is a lot of opportunities to shove big contracts in by making that first year relatively small. And people obviously say, well, what happens the next year? So let's open up a hypothetical scenario here where the Seahawks go all in this offseason and they put together a really good team. Maybe they win the division. Let's say they make the NFC title game and lose. Let's say Wilson has a great year. Let's say the new look defense plays well and they make it to the Final Four and they lose. Okay. At that point, you would probably extend Wilson because at that point he will have proven himself in the new offense. He will have won some of the doubters over. And at that point, the front office will probably feel pretty obligated to say, okay, here's a fourth contract. So you've got that. And if you take a look at our 2023 salary books, it's short, right? There are not a lot of players here. There's not a lot of names here. The big hit in 2023 right now is Wilson. But remember, if you extend him, a lot of this money can get pushed down the line. So this $40 million cap hit can get pushed down the line. And maybe some of you guys are sick of doing that, but that's very standard practice for NFL teams right now. You are still going to be married to Jamal Adams. There's no point in moving off of Jamal at this point. You are still going to be married to Tyler Lockett for the same reason. And those guys are going to cost a lot of money. Combined, their cap hit right now in 2023 is $35 million. I think it'll be a little more if you restructure their contracts this offseason. It could be about 36. But other than that, Gabe Jackson, I can pretty much guarantee you he will be gone. We will only owe him the $3 million. We're going to have some dead money on the books still from Dunlap void years, the Mayoa void year, Carson's void year, and Hyder's void year. But the void year combined is going to be less than $10 million still. It's going to be right around 8, I think. So you're going to have a little bit of dead money. But you guys got to remember, the cap is going up. The cap continues to climb. It's estimated to be about $260 million. So some of those big contracts you gave out in 2022's offseason, they're going to get bigger in 2023. But you're not going to get to the big money yet. So you can still afford to pay a Jamal Adams and a Tyler Lockett and whatever Wilson's cap hit would be on an extended contract. And you're still going to be able to keep a guy like a Hassan Reddick or a Clowney or an Armstead because they're not to the big years of that contract yet. And even if it's you end up in a slightly uncomfortable spot with the cap, you can push some of their money to future years a little bit. You can move things around. And remember, one thing that I really want to stress here is I am not advocating for the Seahawks to trade their future draft picks in order to go all in. Not like what the Rams did. What the Rams did, I'm not even asking for that. I'm asking for aggressive roster trimming and aggressive free agency signing. I'm not asking for us to trade all our draft picks. So you guys got to realize something. Like, let's say you bring in somebody like a Jason Kelce on a one-year deal for $7 million. Let's just throw that number out there. You might also draft a center in the third round in this draft, and then he's ready to take over for Kelce in 2023. So you'll have Kelce, who is making $7 million, leaving, and you're going to have the third round center, if you picked a good one, hopefully you will have, replacing him. And how much is he going to count against the cap that year? He's going to be like, what, $1.4 million? You're still going to have Darrell Taylor. Hopefully he'll have broken out and been a star at this point, only $2 million against the cap. Even a guy like Jordan Brooks is not going to be taking a ton of money. So this is all possible. It does depend on you drafting well. It depends on you spreading out your big cap hits. But you can take the Jamal Adams cap hit on the chin. You can take the Tyler Lockett cap hit on the chin. And also live with the Armsteads and the Clowneys and the Reddicks of the world. Because you still haven't gotten to the big money for those guys. And then in 2024, the next year, right? Okay. So a lot of those contracts, they're going to start to get a little fatter at this point, right? And you've got Lockett now counting $24 million against the cap, still kind of hard to get out from under it. Jamal Adams, kind of hard to get out from under it. $24 million against the cap almost in 2024. Okay, not great. But at this point, you're probably going to be extending Michael Dixon because he'll be, I believe, in the final year of his contract, or at the very least, you're moving a little bit of that money around. And then there's basically nothing else. You've got like $2 million in dead money from the Dunlap and Mayowa contracts, and that's it. So you're going to have some bigger salary years coming in, but you're going to be able to take those on because there's so little else on these books, right? Of course, it requires you to draft well. Again, I'm not advocating for taking away our draft picks. I don't want to trade our draft picks to get veterans. Not all of them. I wouldn't say I would be completely opposed to the idea, but that's not what I'm advocating for. So you got to understand that if I really wanted us to do what the Rams did, I would be advocating for us to trade all of our draft picks because they basically did that. And I'm not. I understand that you are going to need to find some good rookies, some good guys on that rookie scale in order to keep moving forward. You're probably going to need to find a new free safety pretty quickly here. Hopefully you draft one in like the fourth round and he becomes something by the time it's ready. It's time for him to go out there. But look how low our salary cap commitments are right now for 2024. Yes, you're going to have a bunch of money to guys like Lockett and Adams. By this point, the Metcalf cap hit will be pretty significant. Armstead would be significant if you had him. But you're also going to have guys like Gerald Everett start to fall off the cap. You're going to have guys who signed 3-year deals potentially being cut for very little dead cap. And then you get to turn around and try to use that cap to replenish wherever you need to. Hopefully, Eskridge will be a great player by this point, and he's only going to be counting $1.9 million against the cap, and you're going to have somebody who can maybe start to replace Lockett's production on the field, freeing yourself up for what you do in 2025. So 2025, the only significant cap hits you've still got are Adams and Lockett, right? Because again, the Dixon thing's easy to move around. He's a punter. He's a punter, for God's sakes. But you've got a lot of money devoted to Adams and Lockett, but you can start considering moving on from them with a more reasonable dead cap hit. So now you can let the really bad years of the Metcalf extension, the Armstead contract, the Reddick contract, whoever, take effect. And you're going to have to sync it up. You're going to have to basically space things out so that the really big years for some of the big contracts you're going to be handing out to these hypothetical players do not run into each other. You're going to have to say, okay, it's 2023. This is going to be the year that we let Adams and Lockett take huge portions of the cap with their cap hits on the contract that year. But then in another year, you might say, okay, this is the Armstead year. This is the Wilson year. This is the Metcalf year. But again, the salary cap goes up every year by a significant amount. So anybody who thinks that getting a bunch of expensive players this offseason marries you to one good year, a 1 year window, that's not how this works. And by the time you get past 2025, Wilson will probably be looking for another extension. He'll be like 36 or 37. I think he'll be 36 going on 37 at this point. And at that point, you might go, okay, you know what? No fifth extension. We're going to either let you go, we're going to let you play out the last year of your deal, or we can trade you or whatever. But at that point, he'll be at an age where very few quarterbacks have continued to play at an elite level for very long beyond it, right? Like, it's Brady, Rodgers, and that's kind of it. So at that point, you might say, okay, we're moving on from Wilson. We're going to take these cap figures on the chin. It's fine. Hopefully we'll have won a Super Bowl between now and then. And then we just go, okay, 2026, we take a bath. We're probably going to have some big void years paid out to some of these players, like an Armstead, like a Metcalf. We might be paying them a lot of money against our cap to play for other teams, or they'll be on monstrous cap hits because we extended them on top of their void year. And we understand that 2026 is going to be kind of a take the year off year. But isn't that worth it if you can win something? So I just wanted to talk about this stuff to make sure that people understand that A, the salary cap keeps going up. B, most of the players that I want should be good for several years, not just 1 year. And C, you can always get fancy with your contracts to make sure you can keep enough good players around to be competitive and potentially be elite. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below, but just wanted to clarify some stuff. It's not all or nothing as some people seem to think.